everyone, welcome back to Grow Roots. Today I would love to talk to you about one of my favorite plants, and it is the Limelight Hydrangea. And this one that I am training into a tree form or standard form is just in its full glory right now. I love it. So a little bit about this plant. Again, this is a regular Limelight Hydrangea. This is a plant that does well in zones 3 through 9, so almost all throughout the United States, with the exception of South Florida. It can survive those harsh winters, and it can also survive the Texas hot summers. So if you have a very hot summer like I do here in North Texas, this is a hydrangea that actually does need some sun. It needs 4 to 6 hours of sun. This is a panicle hydrangea, so it is different than your regular mop head hydrangeas like this one is. But the panicle hydrangeas, like Limelight hydrangeas, they need 4 to 6 hours at least of sun per day. And for Limelight hydrangeas, that means, the more morning sun you can give it, the better. The more afternoon shade you can get it, the better. So this one actually gets midday sun and starts getting shaded in the hot afternoon, like 3 to 4 p.m. And my other one in the backyard is about the same. The one in my backyard actually might get more shade than this one does, and that's not what I expected. But they need a little bit of protection in the hot afternoon sun, no doubt. And honestly, by the end of July, these blooms, which are so beautiful and white, right now they start out green and then the panicles turn white. These guys will get a little bit sun scorched towards the end of July, and that is normal and that is okay. And you can even see we've had a couple weeks of 100-degree plus really hot days, like excessive heat warnings, and you can see some of these leaves are getting a little bit sun scorched on that. So, and that's okay. The plant is still going to be okay. You do need to water them fairly frequently, especially if they're in a container like mine is. But yeah, I mean, they survive in really cold temperatures and really hot temperatures, and I think it's just a superstar of a plant. A couple of really cool things about the Limelight Hydrangea. In my experience, they have been pretty much pest free for the most part. I do have like little grasshopper thingies that like to come chew on the leaves. I'm not exactly sure what's going on with this leaf or this leaf, but you know what, I've had things like that, and the plants, I mean the limelights, they survive in really harsh conditions, y'all. That's why I love this plant. Another really cool thing that you should know about it is these blooms, if you are in northern zones, probably zones maybe 6 and below, or maybe even zone 7, 7A maybe, if your summers don't get incredibly hot and your blooms don't scorch, if they stay really nice like this, and you get cool nights starting in like September, October, if your nights start cooling down about that time, then these panicles, these blooms will turn like a pink color. And here in the south, they don't really do that, but I'm going to try something new this year. Not with this tree form, because I'm pruning this very specifically to stay in a tree form, but I will show you my limelight in the back. And what I'm going to do with the limelight in the back is, once my first set of blooms get sun scorched in a few weeks probably, I'm going to prune them off, probably down to the base. I'm gonna let new branches come, and then I'm going to hope that it blooms again, because we will stay hot and it'll have all of August and September to get new blooms, and then there'll be newer blooms like this by the time our nights start getting cooler, which is like late September, October, our nights will start getting cooler, and then I'm hoping for some pink blooms. So we'll see if that happens, but that's something that's really cool about these guys. The other thing that I need to say is this particular one, the Limelight, the regular Limelight, can get 8 feet by 8 feet depending on how you prune it. And so I'm going to show you the one in my backyard, and I'm going to show you how I prune it. Well, kind of talk about how I prune it and how I keep it kind of manageable so it does not get 8 feet by 8 feet, because I certainly don't have room for that back there. Okay, so here is the mama Limelight Hydrangea. This is the mama to all of my other Limelight Hydrangeas that I have, including the tree form, the standard that I just showed you that I'm training. But this plant, I just put it in the ground actually this past fall. It was in a very large container, but in kind of the same spot. It used to be like right there. And I transplanted it because I felt it got too large for the container, and put it in the ground there because I knew it would like life there. It's been living there for 2 to 3 summers now, since 2020. Yeah, so it's 4th summer actually, and my Limelight is about 3.5 feet tall, maybe 4 feet, but that's minimum, that's maximum. And then it's maybe 3 to 3.5 feet wide. And this one, you can tell it's just kind of starting to get its blooms on it. The one that I have in my front yard in the container is more advanced in its blooms, and I honestly think that it gets slightly more sun potentially, or maybe it's the fact that it's in a container. I'm not really sure, but it is more advanced. This guy's just kind of starting to get in 2-3 weeks. This guy will be this girl will be in her beautiful glory. But it's just been such a fun plant. So in the late winter, very early spring, before I see any green on this plant coming up, I will prune it back. And what this has done is not only has managed its height, because I don't really want it to get 8 feet by 8 feet like it could get, but another thing that it has done, I hope maybe I can show you a little bit more underneath, like here. It has created much stronger branching, and yes, you see some yellow leaves down here, and it is because we have had very extremely hot temperatures. Like I said, 105, 110, feels like 115 degree temperatures, so that's to be expected. This plant is going to be just fine. We've gone through this before. But you can see what I've done when you prune a panicle hydrangea in the late winter, early spring, you don't want to take off any more than 1/3 of its growth. And that's kind of exactly what I've done. So I've looked at the base, like this really strong branch right here. That's a great strong branch. You could see where I pruned it right here in the late winter, and that was 1/3 of its size, and now it's grown all the way back. It'll grow a little bit bigger, and then this branch has created 4 different branches, and at the end of in late winter or early spring next year, I will see how tall this is, and I'll trim 1/3 of it off again. But it creates stronger branches. It makes it so that these guys don't flop. The first summer and a little bit in the second summer, the branches were pretty floppy, and it's because it hadn't developed a really strong base yet. You see how thick these have grown and gotten, but then the new ones that grow are quite thin, and when they get these huge gigantic panicles on the tops of them, especially when we get a summer storm and they get full of water, it'll flop over. But when you have a really strong base like this, it's not likely to do that at all. So pruning is really important, just one time a year with the Limelight Hydrangea. And again, actually, I'm going to try a new pruning method this year, and that is when I anticipate by the end of July these blooms might sun scorch. It might be into August for me actually, because this guy's a little bit late on blooming this year. But when these guys sun scorch, I will cut them maybe even before they sun scorch, because they would make great dried flowers. I can show you some of the dried flowers that I've done. They dry really, really, really well, and they're big and they're beautiful, and you can keep them for years and years to come. It's just so cool. But anyway, I will cut these back, and then I will hope that in the last couple months of our heat, it will re-flush and re-bloom, and then we'll start getting cooler nights. And when we get cooler nights with panicle hydrangeas, they start turning a little bit pink. And this is, as you can see, they start out really green and then they turn a whitish color. And here in the south, we don't really get to see them turn pink. So I'm excited to see what this little experiment will do, and I will keep you updated. I also wanted to let you know that there are smaller varieties of panicles available. There are little lime hydrangeas, which get to be, let me see my little notes, 3 to 5 feet tall, which is kind of what this guy is for now, but that's their maximum. And little lime punch, which gets to be 3 to 6 feet. That's by proven winners. Little lime punch is specifically bred genetically to turn like a magenta red color by the end of the season with cooler nights. And then there's Limelight Prime, which gets 4 to 6 feet tall. So all of the other varieties are much smaller and more compact than the Limelight Hydrangea is. And but the Limelight Prime is specifically bred to bloom earlier. So Limelights will bloom here in North Texas. They bloom about mid to late June to early July is when Limelights. But Limelight Primes are supposed to be specifically bred to bloom earlier than that, especially if you're living in the northern zones. In the cooler zones, you even get later bloom times with the Limelight. I think maybe even mid-July, mid to late July or August. But with Limelight Prime, that would bloom much sooner for you. So there are a lot of different options based on what your garden is like. But again, make sure that they're getting sun. They need sun, despite what everybody thinks about hydrangeas. Panicle hydrangeas definitely need sun. But in the hotter zones, you definitely want to keep them in the shade in the late afternoon heat times of day. But I'll go and show you. So those are my 2 hydrangeas, or Limelight hydrangeas. And then the cool thing is, when you go to prune in late winter, what I have learned is that you could keep the branches that you prune off. I left mine outside in the winter. I don't know what that is. In the late winter, I left them outside for 1 to 2 weeks to dry out, and then I stuck them in dirt. This container was empty, and I had a branch that had see, this one didn't make it. It had multiple branches coming up, and I kind of laid the branch horizontally in there with the branches sticking up like this. Here's one of them. Okay, from there. There's one, and I think, where's the other one? There's so many other plants in there, and there's another one right here. And it started growing in the spring, so how exciting. I've got another Limelight. This guy, the leaves are a little bit yellow, and I just noticed this. So this is something that can happen with all hydrangeas. When you start seeing the yellow of the leaf and then green veining, it's probably an iron deficiency. It's called chlorosis. And there's a couple of things that you can do. I'm going to try first with adding iron. I have a liquid iron that gets mixed with a little bit of water. It's like an iron concentrate that I can add to this soil because it's lacking mostly iron, is what this is telling me. If a couple of doses of iron don't work, then I will put a soil acidifier in there, and that just means the soil is not acidic enough to take up the iron that is in the soil. So that's the other thing that I can do to try to help this. But again, this plant is going to be okay as long as I give it some iron. It's going to be just fine. And then next year it's going to be this glorious Limelight that I'll probably have to take out of this small container because it's going to need a lot of root room for roots. All right, and then one more that I have is another one of my cuttings that survived, and you can see actually the grasshoppers are getting this one. I've seen the grasshoppers getting this plant, but that's about all. And I stuck this guy in soil. It started growing. It's got multiple shoots and good to go. So that concludes my Limelight Hydrangea video. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope that you're inspired. I know that you can grow this plant. You definitely can do it. If I can do it, then you certainly can do it. And I hope that you really enjoy your Limelight. Have a great day. Bye-bye.